I started Applico 11 years ago on some credit cards, got down to days of runway, sometimes hours of runway. It really ultimately, at the end of the day, is going to come down to you, the leader. There's probably some really uncomfortable phone calls that you don't want to make right now. And those phone calls could be the difference between life and death. Times are tough, as we've heard that the next few weeks are going to get even tougher, looking at the unemployment numbers, looking at the numbers of people newly infected or passing away because of this virus. So it's going to be a tough time. But I've spoken about it on the show a lot. The tech startup and the state of tech startups are in, very difficult period here. This article just came out in the New York Times talking about startups are pummeled in the great unwinding. That ClassPass, which was kind of a startup darling here, now lost 95% of its revenue in 10 days. I mean, what do you do? So they slashed spending and froze hiring and trying to do a video streaming service for virtual workouts. But who's going, you literally can't go to an in-person group workout class anymore. So unfortunately, you're seeing a lot of this. The big incumbents, they are being hurt by this as well. But again, they're not going to be as hurt by this as the tech startups. So me as a founder, I started Applico 11 years ago on some credit cards. I've seen a lot of tough times over those 11 years. Fortunately, the state of Applico today is in a relatively good place compared to certainly many other businesses that are just much harder hit by the virus and a slowdown in business. And we've been profitable for many years, so we don't also have the challenge of needing to raise fundraising, and it's just a very tough time for founders of tech startups right now. And the only note that that I can give is there was, for me, probably like 6 years, maybe ending 5 years ago. So starting 7 years ago, there was a period of probably about 2.5 to 3 years where I did not know how we were going to make the next payroll. If we had 2 weeks of runway, I was feeling pretty good about myself. But it got down to days of runway, sometimes hours of runway, and it got so bad to the point where I actually started to get the shakes, and that's how things are things are getting pretty heated when you physically start shaking because things are so dire. I would imagine that there's probably a lot of founders out there of different tech startups that are feeling similarly right now, and it's very difficult. From having been there many years ago, the thing that ultimately helped get me through it was a conviction about the future and having a supreme confidence that if we could make it through this period of time, that we would be in such a great place to capture that vision that I saw for the company. And every founder has their vision, their own respective vision for their company. So it really ultimately, at the end of the day, is going to come down to you, the leader. And how do you put a smile on your face and try to lift the spirits of your team and your employees? And it is not easy to do. Having people that you can confide in, whether other executives on your team or outside advisors or investors or friends, family, significant others, right? What is that kind of network, hopefully, that you have around you that can help take off some of the burden in terms of just talking about the state of things, in terms of what you're probably doing right now is you're probably trying to solve for, how do I make payroll in, you just had the payroll run. So how do you make the next payroll in about 10 days? And that is probably where a lot of your mind is. And it is, it's very troubling. And sometimes you can only do so much. You're going to have maybe 20 different contingency plans, but where it gets really stressful is when you can't do anything. You're just kind of waiting. You're waiting to hear back, or you're waiting, to get this news or see how bad that news is going to be. And so what that conviction does, what that confidence does, is it helps to keep the team, even though the team knows that things are dire. One lesson learned is to be honest and transparent with the numbers with the team. It is a very difficult thing to do. And honestly, I didn't do it as well as I should have. And I learned the hard way, basically. But if you're upfront about the numbers and you're transparent, it's tough to say, hey, do I tell the team that we don't know how to make payroll in 2 weeks? But honestly, if you are honest with your team, you're going to find out a bunch of things. If you tell people, I don't know how to make payroll in 2 weeks, you're going to see a bunch of things happen. One, you're going to see employees that are really there and want to be there through the thick and thin. And you know what? They may have some pretty good ideas on how to solve the problem. Two, when you take drastic measures, people won't be as freaked out. Honestly, they will have context for why you are doing the things that you're doing, or why you're kind of acting the way that you are, or why you are acting with a certain level of urgency that you may not have acted with otherwise, right? So that kind of information is important to share with the team because that context goes a long way. Being honest about the state of the numbers is one thing that I learned the hard way. The other thing is, if you have that conviction and you have that confidence that you are going to be able to make it through this, that if you are able to make it through this, you're going to come out much stronger on the other side of this, which I actually think is very true about the current state of things with coronavirus. What that's going to allow you to do is make those phone calls. There's probably some really uncomfortable phone calls that you don't want to make right now. And those phone calls could be the difference between life and death for your business. And if you can, pay those bills or pay that payroll or, whatever it may be. That's ultimately going to come down to the founder and whether or not you think you have that conviction. Can you make those uncomfortable phone calls? Ultimately, I did it. And we got through it and we came out much stronger and we made it through the storm. Ultimately, the storm was much longer than I thought the storm was going to be. I kept on telling myself the storm was going to be maybe a year long. Turned out to be like 2.5 or 3 years long. Literally for over 2 years, I don't think I knew how to make payroll for like 2 weeks out. I mean, it was bonkers. Luckily, we made it through it. And the business has been in a great shape ever since. But it is a very difficult state to be in for these founders, and I feel for you, and hope you get through it, because this right now, what's happening right now, I think is going to be a somewhat short-term blip. Things have cratered rather aggressively, you could say. But I think once we get through to the other side of this, you are going to see the economy pick up again. You are going to see things start to return to, not immediately to a level of normalcy, but you're going to see things come back, I think, a lot faster than the 08-09 collapse. If you can make it through this, if you can have a good support system, be honest with your team, make the tough decisions, and figure out a way to get through this, I think there will be a lot of green grass on the other side of this. Hi, this is Alex from Winner Take All. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the content. Feel free to leave a comment, ask us questions, and definitely make sure to join us on our next live stream.